Welcome back to the Devy Dojo. I'm your host, the Devy Sensei, and once again, I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Chris, the Devy Shifu. So Chris, how you doing tonight before we get into the episode?
I'm good, man. I'm down here in the dungeon basement studio, and it is a little chilly because it has been cold here in Pittsburgh, but it's not as bad as the other day when I accidentally left the back door to my basement open. And my wife was like, it's really, really, really cold downstairs. And I'm like, it's the wintertime. It's just what happens. It's a basement, blah, blah, blah. And then I went down and I'm like, somebody left the door open. I don't know who somebody was, but it wasn't even me. So it's much better now than it was then.
Well, Chris, I'm glad to hear that you're staying a little warm. And for the listeners, you're going to be pretty warm because we're bringing the heat tonight. Look, last week, we're going to pick up where we left off because last episode, we put the 2026 and the 2027 rookie classes on the same board, and we let the values sort themselves out instead of treating them as these separate conversations. And look, Chris, we know that the narrative coming into this was pretty clear. 2027 is viewed as that gold standard, and 2026, by comparison, is pretty underwhelming. So we tested the idea head-to-head in those first two rounds. But this episode, as promised, we're going to bring rounds 3 and 4 of that same combined mock. The same rules, both classes eligible, but now we're into the part of the draft where I think you could say the opinions start to separate and the differences in how people value these classes really start to show up. So if the top of the board set the tone, Chris, I think this is where we see how that real value gap actually is. So without saying too much, man, we got a lot to unpack. So let's just get into it. Let's start with round 3, first pick.
First pick is a guy who I thought might make it into the first 2 rounds. And I think it's still being slept on both here by some of us at the dojo and just kind of in general. KC Concepcion. He has been a very good wide receiver this year. He's getting a lot of buzz as kind of the next wave of wide receivers after the big 3. The narrative all year has been there's the big 3 at wide receiver, right? We're all very excited about Lemon, about Tate, about Tyson. And right behind it, there's a quality crop of wide receivers. And I feel like the narrative of 2026 has been that it's not as great. And that's what we're doing here with these last 2 episodes. This one and the last one is trying to compare 2027 and 2026. But I do think that there's a decent bit of depth at the wide receiver position here this year. So maybe not as top heavy as before. We like those big 3, not a superstar Calvin Johnson, AJ Green type at the top, but some really solid prospects at the top. But I do like the depth a lot as we progress through. And we've seen guys already get taken in this mock in the second round, like Chris Brazzell, like Jeremy Bernard. And right now we have KC Concepcion coming in here at 301, and for good reason. I love this guy. You talk about all the time aura at the catch point. That's what he's got, man. He just goes up there and gets the ball. He plays bigger than he is. But what I really like about him is this polished route running. He's got really crisp and clean cuts, and he's got some extreme, sneaky acceleration. Sometimes he can just absolutely dominate a defender when he's coming off the line, and then he can use that route running technique to find ways to get open once he's already beaten his defender. So I think that he's got one of the higher ceilings in this wide receiver class if you place him in the right offense. I'm not sure that he's going to plug and play everywhere. And, that's kind of the theme with a lot of wide receivers. Very few of them are going to be consistent right off the bat. But I think he's got a shot to potentially be one of my flag plants, depending on landing spot, of, maybe leading the NFL in targets as a rookie, amongst rookie wide receivers. Not amongst all wide receivers. That would be crazy. But, he's got a shot, I think, if he lands in the right spot. I could see Pittsburgh maybe taking a shot on him and him getting a lot of targets right off the bat. So I think depending on where he lands, he's going to be a big riser as we get here into draft season.
To piggyback off what you're saying, Chris, you already know that I love this guy. And I probably should have mentioned at the top that this was a mock draft done in conjunction with all of us there at the Devy Dojo. Chris and myself, Ben and Josh are 2 Substack writers for the team as well. And this was my pick. And I knew that I had to start this round off with some heat. And KC Concepcion has been getting a lot of steam in the NFL draft community. He's been getting a lot of first round buzz right now. And I really think it's warranted. Chris, I do have to admit that he was typecasted as kind of like this gadgety role player only. And I think early in his career, you did see that. But this year, his final season there at Texas A&M, you saw his alignment change. I mean, 65% of his alignment snaps were out wide. And that was something that you hadn't really seen early in his career. So he was playing some boundary positions and going out there and winning along the sidelines against some really talented corners there in the SEC. Physicality and toughness at the catch point. He really has those strong hands, which is something that I didn't really expect to see. Even in the playoff game versus Miami, you saw him take some big time hits against that really good Miami defense. So I really have no doubts about his ability to translate that level of his game to the pros. I've comped him to Emmanuel Sanders because of that alignment versatility. Height and weight are pretty similar to when Emmanuel Sanders went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's just so many plays that I saw in the All 22 that just reminded me of Emmanuel Sanders, taking it over the top with the defender bearing down and those strong hands, man, to not let it go. I think that he's going to be a great weapon. I would love to see a team like the San Francisco 49ers take him because I think that they could use that versatility and kind of that gadgety role, as well as just having a guy that can line up out wide and just go dominate with Brandon Ayuk, speeding around the stadium, whatever the heck he's doing. So love to see him
Right.
go.
Yeah, that's a great call too. And they, the Niners have done great things with all these injuries. So don't get me wrong, but you see the Bills get a lot of flack for swinging and missing a lot of these wide receivers. And like low key, the Niners have swung and missed a little bit between the way they botched the whole Ayuk thing and then, taking Pearsall, who is obviously a stud of an individual, taking a gunshot and then getting back in, a month and a half later or whatever is great, but he hasn't really produced when he's on the field. Juwan Jennings is awesome, but he's not the guy you want to be your wide receiver one. So I think that would be a great landing spot for him. And hopefully he would be able to come in and produce immediately. Moving on, we have our first 2027 pick of this round, which is Nick Marsh, who has been one of your guys for a very long time. But the real exciting thing here, we obviously have him in his Michigan State jersey, but he's going to the national champions next year to play with Josh Hoover. So I think there's a lot of buzz that he's potentially got a chance to be one of the top receivers in the Big Ten next year, if not the entire NCAA in this new pairing. And we've seen how they have used wide receivers. They've kind of scattered it a little bit amongst all of their different talent there at the wide receiver position, but he's got a chance to come in and truly be the alpha in that wide receiver room in Indiana.
You know how excited I was, Chris, when I saw this. I've been clamoring for Nick Marsh to enter the transfer portal for a while because he's such a talent at the wide receiver position. And unfortunately, he was stuck in the hell that is Michigan State. And now he has the chance to break free and really show us what he's all about. And the fact that Curt Cignetti chose him has me super excited because we've all seen what Curt Cignetti has been able to do in the transfer portal. Undefeated season now, ended it with a national championship. Indiana, of all teams, are national champions. And now Nick Marsh gets to go into that environment, into that system, and with that coach. And we both like Josh Hoover, too. I'm still not quite sold on Josh Hoover's ability to be like a pro NFL quarterback. But the fact that, again, these two are going to the system, they have the ability to show us what they're all about. And I mean, even this season, he 662 yards, 6 touchdowns, nothing to write home about, 1.72 yards per route run. It's a lot deeper than those numbers, man. You got to watch the film because the dude is tough. He's able to run legitimate routes. I've seen him sink his hips and beat corners on the outside. Has a decent variety of a release package. He does need to work in his overall route tree, but the talent is there. The physicality is there. Dude got 100 at least on the dog metric, right? That new dog metrics that we've unleashed where really it's just where I stare at the TV and I yell at them like, are you a dog? And they either answer me with a big play or they don't. Well, every time I asked Nick Marsh, are you a dog? He responded. So I'm super happy to see him go there. Over the moon for him. I have a lot of Devy shares of him as well. So pretty excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, he's definitely a dog, and I love that idea of the dog metric. It's just you barking at your TV and seeing what comes back out at you. Absolutely. So we're excited to see what he can do. I'm kind of with you on Hoover. I don't know that I trust him a ton as a Devy asset, but I like him to be able to get the ball to his receivers and put up some numbers, maybe potentially even more than Heisman Trophy winner Mendoza, who didn't even clear 3,000, put up some nice numbers and get this ball spread around. This was my pick, and he's a guy who's been climbing up my ranks the more I look at analytics. Mario Craver. Mario Craver has been one of the best wide receivers in the entire college football game this year, especially when you start diving into his metrics. So if you take power 4 wide receivers and sort them by yards per route run, he is 4th with 3.26 yards per route run, ahead of Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate. This guy is a yards per route run machine, and we know that that's one of my favorite metrics. It's one of the most translatable ones to the NFL game. But it's not all just about the stats. He's just a yak monster out there, man. He fights hard for the ball and fights hard for the yardage after the ball. And I think that, A&M, it feels like, had this really underrated season this year where and I know they were in the playoff, but it doesn't seem like people are talking about them as much. You and I have talked before about my love for Le'Veon Moss and how I think he's still kind of flying under the radar. I just think in general that entire offense has been flying under the radar, and Mario Craver's got a real chance to make a name for himself next year.
Chris, when we made this selection, I was wondering, I said, I bet you this man was looking at the analytics because his yards per route run are incredible. 3.26 on the season, over 500, almost 600 of his yards came after the catch. Really paints the picture of exactly what you said. My only pushback on this, Chris, would be his size. He's listed at 5'9", 165 pounds. So I do have concerns about his ability to translate and do these things at the next level. A lot of just get him the ball and let him work, which is fine. We've seen that be able to work in the NFL. Right, Zay Flowers is 5'9", about the same. So we've seen this type of archetype in the NFL. I do just have questions about his physicality, but I do love the kid, and he pairs well with Marcel Reed. And I think going forward now with KC Concepcion out declaring for the draft, I think that perhaps we might see Mario Craver be able to take that next step and be the first read in the progression for their quarterback, Marcel Reed there. So I have no issue with it. It's not somebody that I would select just because I'm a little bit of a size king when it comes to these wide receivers, not entirely, but when you're only 165 pounds soaking wet, I do have some concerns, but I do understand the pick.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always going to be a concern. But, right here, I was shooting for upside. I've been looking at all these stats and I was ready for it. And a fun fact about him, he put up over 200 yards against Notre Dame this year. And that was the first time anybody's put a 200-yard game up against a ranked team since Mike Evans.
Ooh.
Back in 2013.
Nice. I didn't know that. And I mean, let's be real. He balled out in that game too. He had one of the sickest catches along the sideline. Took some hits and he was like bouncing off some people, rolling, and just kept going. And I think he took it to the house on that play. I just remember it being an incredible play. To pretty much kick off the season there.
And obviously, Mike Evans is a completely different kind of receiver, but it's fun to be in those conversations. Next up, we're continuing the wide receiver role here, and we have Ryan Williams. And I know that we were getting a lot of hate for not having Ryan Williams on the first 2 rounds, in the comments. So we appreciate everybody chirping us and letting us know how we're wrong. And please do that again, because we love interacting with you guys in the comment section. The reason Ryan Williams has fallen off for me is quite simply, he's not catching the damn ball. And when you have a wide receiver, what do you want him to do? You want him to catch the ball, right? So we've seen a real regression in his game this year. We've talked before about Jeremy Bernard becoming that go-to guy for Ty Simpson, and with good reason. You just can't trust Ryan Williams here in the year of our Lord 2026, or at least in the year of our Lord 2025 when he was playing football. I think he's got a good chance for a bounce back, and I think this is a great spot to select him because of that upside right there, right? So we're here in the 3rd round of a combined 26-27 mock. It makes a lot of sense for him to go in this position ahead of some of those guys that are, more of depth throws and 2nd round guys in the 2026 draft, Dynasty rookie drafts. I think he's got a real shot to reclaim a lot of that value, especially with Bernard out of the picture. However, the reason he fell out so hard is just because he was dropping the ball. He didn't look like the same person this year as he did last year. And of course, he was extremely young last year, and that was impressive. I don't know if he got in his own head. He's still extremely young. He's younger than most of the people, playing football right now. So he's got a little bit of growth to do, but the way he responds this offseason is going to be really huge for him. And unfortunately, he hasn't seen his value bounce back like some of the other players who had slow starts to the year, like the Arch Mannings of the world. You know what I mean? So I think he's a good receiver. There's a very talented receiver in there. But the reason he's going at 304 right now for me is solely because of drops. And this wasn't my selection. This was Josh's selection, but I think he was probably right about there for all 4 of us as we were picking.
Josh even mentioned that in our group chat when we were doing this mock. He said, like, look, third round, I got to shoot for upside. It's time to take Ryan Williams. And I completely agree. I contemplated taking him there at 301 just because of the talent that he presents. Look, his most famous catch in his freshman year, the twirling parade, ballerina type stuff. I've said before, I've comped him to Lynn Swan, the way that he's able to go up it and display that body control, and he still possesses those abilities. It's just simply his hand positioning when he goes to catch the ball is just not that you would see of a typical wide receiver. Why you saw him have 10 drops this season, and it's why you saw him have 7 drops last season. That's 17 drops in 2 seasons for the young cat. So drops aren't always the biggest thing in terms of like development and being able to correct that moving forward. However, it is still important. It can be a drive killer, which we saw multiple times this season. I think even against Georgia this season, Ty Simpson had him on a post route, I believe, had him wide open, and he just dropped it unexplicably. You're like, what's going on with this guy here? But for talent and upside and still honestly name value. The reason we were getting so much hate, Chris, is because the kid still has name value. People are like, hey, I've been hearing about Ryan Williams. He was a 17-year-old breakout. How come he's not out there? How come he's not in your mock? And it's like, well, when you watch the games throughout the whole season, his value has dropped. For some people, I think they're still willing to take him a little higher, but for us in the dojo, we've been pretty critical of his drops and that like you just didn't see it get better over time. In the Iron Bowl this season, he had 0 targets, 0 catches. In one of your big time rivalry games, in a game that they needed somebody to step up, even the broadcasters were saying, "Where's Ryan Williams? Don't you think it's time to get that kid a catch?" And you just didn't see it because I don't think that over the course of the season, Ty Simpson really trusted him in those moments. He was looking towards Jeremy Bernard. He was looking towards Izzy Horton, people like that. So he did drop, but he's going to have a chance to really be the guy this season. So I'm excited. We'll see what Keelan Russell, that's who we're projecting to be Ryan Williams' quarterback. We'll see what they got there, right? Kalen DeBoer needs to really start winning some more of these games and showing that offensive mastermind that he's been claimed to be.
Yeah, you nailed it. No need to drone on about Ryan Williams. We're just hoping that he's going to have a little bit of a bounce back year next year and reclaim some of that value, because if you have him on your team, you spent some good value on him to get him on your Devy roster. Next up was your second pick of this round, Trinidad Chambliss, who's a guy who has made insane names for himself. And obviously right now he's in the middle of a lawsuit trying to fight his way back to the NCAA, but he might get forced into the draft, which I'm not sure is necessarily a bad thing for him, considering all of the good quarterbacks are going back to school. So he's got a realistic shot to be a top 5 quarterback taken in the draft if he's forced to go. But this guy is fighting really hard to try to go back to school.
I'm so torn about it, Chris, because on one hand, I love that he wants to stay there at Ole Miss. He wants to stay at the school that gave him a shot to move out of Division II and go compete for a national championship. Trinidad Chambliss simply wasn't supposed to be here. Remember, at the start of the season, it was Austin Simmons, one of #my guys. Remember, you remember how high I was on Austin Simmons. There's something about those southpaws, man, that just really gets me revved up. But Austin Simmons goes out with injury. Trinidad Chambliss comes in, and his first game in, 353 yards, a touchdown, had some rushing yards. Like, you know what? This Trinidad Chambliss kid looks pretty good. And he just never slowed down throughout the course of the season. It was really incredible to watch. I think the only knock that you could really put in his game is that he's 6 foot, which I put air quotes around because there's no way in hell he's actually 6 foot. It's probably about 5'11", maybe 190, 200 pounds. He's got a thin frame, but man, he does not play small at all. We saw in the college football playoffs making magic, spinning around, kind of looking like a prime Russell Wilson out there, just making plays with his feet, scrambling out of the pocket when there's pressure and throwing down the field and just making that magic happen. And that run that he had throughout the college football playoffs, his draft stock was at an all-time high. And so that's why personally I do hope that his waiver is denied. Of course, if you don't know, he is out of eligibility, but he did put in a waiver for an extra year of eligibility to the NCAA, citing some stuff that happened while he was in Division II. I don't want to get into all that. His waiver was initially denied, and now he's appealing it. So he's really fighting hard to stay in college. But I do hope personally, selfishly, that it's denied and that he goes to the NFL draft, because the 2026 rookie class really needs a shot in the arm at the quarterback position. Because right now it's looking like Fernando Mendoza, which is kind of we struggle with our evaluation of him. It's like I see a really good in real life quarterback. I see a quarterback that could be good for those teams in real life in terms of leadership and things like that, but I'm not sure about fantasy wise what that would look like. But I think Trinidad Chambliss could be the most fantasy relevant quarterback position in the 2026 draft were he to declare because of that rushing utility that he has, because of the arm and all those things that he presents. So I think that he could be a really tantalizing option and could steam up to like the 105, 106 spot in the rookie drafts.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are going to be overdrafting Mendoza, especially after this wonderful undefeated run. I mean, just a magical season, man. You know, the Heisman, the MVP of the national game, championship game. Fantastic kid. I wish him nothing but the best. I don't necessarily want him on my fantasy team, but I think a lot of people are going to be, especially in Superflex, they're going to be letting me get some guys pushing back. And we talked about this a little bit, through text, that he's going to get jumped up there and I think not be as producing as people want out of those high picks from a fantasy perspective. But I think he's going to have a nice long career in the NFL. And I like Trinidad's overall, Konami code upside if it gets to that point where he has to get taken. And you know what? My boy Drew Aller, you never know, man. You got to talk about my boy. There's a chance that he could go in the day 2.
He hasn't even declared. Drew Aller's getting ready for a real job. You need to let him go.
Oh, man. Next up, we have Emmett Johnson, who has been a fun one that we've talked about several times here on the dojo. A guy who I think has been making some waves. Again, we've talked about that tier 1, very clear tier of Jeremiah Love, and it seems like everybody's got a different opinion about who the next couple RBs are. And I've seen some people outside of the dojo talking about Emmett Johnson as potentially the second running back in the class, especially from a dynasty and superflex or dynasty and rookie point of view. I think Emmett Johnson does have a nice, well-rounded game. I think he's one of the few running backs in this class that has an opportunity to potentially be a true workhorse, or at least a true workhorse in the modern NFL sense, where you're getting 60% of the touches instead of 80 or 85 like they did back in the day. But he is, man, he's just a lot of fun to watch. He runs really hard. He can do all things well. I don't know that he's going to be a big receiving threat in the NFL level, so you might want to split him a little bit with some more of a satellite back type. But he looks like a more complete back that would have been getting more buzz if he wasn't playing in Nebraska.
I love Emmett Johnson. He's my running back too. I say that unapologetically. I know other people have others. I love Jonah Coleman too, but watching the film, man, I really fell in love with Emmett Johnson because of the quick feet. It could be muddied in the pocket, a lot of traffic around him. He's so shifty and so elusive, and that's why you saw 66 missed tackles forced on the season. You mentioned his toughness at a mere 200 pounds, Chris. This guy has 741 yards after contact. And we should mention he led the country in rushing yardage this season and over 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, only 1 fumble. Very, very productive. And why I like that is because Nebraska's offensive line isn't terrible by any means. I believe they were middle of the pack. But in terms of run blocking, they weren't always the best. And sometimes you saw pressure you saw a defender in his face right away, and he's having to make a move and a cut just to get a few yards. I absolutely love this kid, man. You don't think he's a good receiver, huh? That shocked me a little bit because I think he's a really good receiver.
I don't know that he's got the full blown, never take him off the field receiving workhorse outcome. I think that he might benefit a little bit from having a guy who's more of a receiving specialist there and let him focus a little bit more on running all over the field, inside and outside. The modern NFL game, it's going to have situations where you're going to get guys balls, but I don't know that you want to get this guy, 50 balls every year through the air.
Yeah. He had 46 catches this season for 370 yards. I don't think he's like a dynamic passing weapon out there going to run a variety of routes, but he's going to take those screens and those dump offs. He's very agile. He can make a defender miss. Just get the ball in his hands, man, and he's going to go out there and make magic. That's what I really like about him, man. I think people are sleeping on his abilities. But once more people start diving into the tape, I'm telling you, man, this kid's really good. Not sure what type of draft capital we're going to get with these running backs, and so that could always kind of skew how we look at them a little bit. But I mean, anymore, you get guys like Cam Scatabo in the 4th round. You can get running backs like Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round, and they're going to be productive. So I don't really knock the running back position as much anymore. And in a 2026 class that's perceived as relatively weak at the running back position, I think that we're really going to have to delve deep into our scouting to find these gems. And I'm telling you, man, I think we were one of the first to really start shouting this dude's name. And I think this kid's going to be a star at the next level. I really do.
Shout out to you for that. Next up was my pick. If you've been following the dojo for a while now, you know that I absolutely love Hollywood Smothers. I have been singing this guy's praises for quite a while now, and this is without a doubt my favorite transfer so far of this year. Hollywood Smothers is going to Texas. He flirted a little bit there with an Alabama commitment and then decided I'm going to go to Steve Sarkisian, and we're going with Arch and going to join that high-powered offense, and they're reloading a little bit down there in Texas. And he's going to be the featured back out of the backfield. Love what he brings to the table. I've talked about him before. He's slippery. I've used the term buttery smooth. His hip movement is fantastic. He just uses that pristine body control to kind of slide around defenders and keep moving. But he doesn't shy away from defenders either. He hits hard when he needs to. He'll take a tackler head on. I think he's a nice home run threat, but he's willing to do the dirty stuff as well. So the kind of player that you want to get on your team. With a nice year at Texas, I mean, Texas is going to be early favorites to potentially be the national championship contenders next year, right? Especially after adding a guy like this in the backfield. So he's going to be bringing some heat to the table if he can stay healthy. I am so happy that he transferred there.
I am too. I would have been happy with him at Alabama too, truly. But we know Texas, man. We know how they move. They backed up the Brinks truck and they took this guy right out of Bama's hands. And there's some Bama fans in our Discord. Shout out Big Mo there. He was pretty upset about this move, and Cam Coleman as well. You know, that's another guy that they threw some money at. I do really like this move. I do have questions about how he's going to be utilized. You know, Texas had talented backs in the backfield last year, and Steve Sarkisian really wasn't able to use them properly. I know there was some injuries, and there's a lot of context there, but for Steve Sarkisian, for all the hype that he's gotten throughout his years of being able to deploy backs, we really didn't see it last year. But I think that Hollywood Smothers, with the speed that he presents out there, the weapon that he can be with the ball in his hands, I do like the fit, and it's going to be interesting to see how they integrate him with Rayleigh Brown, the other transfer running back out there from Arizona State, who really came on this season, taking over from Cam Scatabo out there. They kind of present a lot of the same skill set, both home run threats. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they're utilized. But we have been big time Hollywood Smothers fans in the dojo for a while. So have to be excited about him going to Texas. And man, they were favorites to win the national championship last year. But I think that you got Arch Manning with a little more seasoning now, another year of development, and we saw him starting to take that next step. Now you got Ryan Wingo, Cam Coleman out there as your two wide receivers, Smothers and Rayleigh Brown. Man, I mean, on paper, it looks pretty good. There's going to be no excuses for Steve Sarkisian this year. I'm sorry. They got to go out there and they got to make a deep run or get a national championship, I think.
I have to agree with you there, man. Pressure is on. Next up, we have Waymond Jordan, who I must admit I have a little bit of a blind spot to, if only because you're the USC guy. I just let you kind of handle all that. I don't watch any of that West Coast football, man. It's late out here whenever we're watching those games. Wow. Every once in a while, man. You know, I was all aboard the King Miller train. King Miller came in after Waymond went down and started to really tear it up. But the reality is Jordan was leading the Big Ten in a ton of statistics, maybe all of the statistics rushing before he got hurt. I think just 5 or 6 games into the year. So I think because of that, he's extremely under the radar right now. He's got a real shot to, catapult himself up into the upper echelon of running backs in next year's draft class.
You might be surprised to hear me say this, but I don't want to say I didn't like this pick. It's just there's other players here that I think I would rather take. Josh cited his reasons for doing it. Exactly pretty much what you said. Like, he was tearing up the Big Ten at the time, but I'm just not quite sure of his long-term outlook. His ceiling, I think, is capped, is what I'm trying to say. He's not a good receiver at all. He's a little bowling ball out there, right? He's got some marginal speed. He's got some good burst out there, but I just don't see it. I mean, King Miller did come in as a walk-on true freshman, and look, he gave us a different element that we were really lacking. So I'm just not quite sure that he's even going to be lead back this season, man. I think he's going to be relegated to more of a committee role, which, I mean, USC, they rotate their backs anyways, but I don't know that he has that vice on the starting position this season. There's a lot of question marks surrounding him and his ability to really bounce back. I mean, that's what they're saying, the beat reporters on 247 and a lot of the sites and people that I'm connected with for the Trojans. So I like it. I think I would have preferred to take him maybe a little later, but I do love Waymond Jordan for my Trojans. He was a beast out there, man. Coming as a junior college transfer the season before, he's always had the odds stacked against him, and he's always risen to the occasion. So perhaps he's going to shut me up and make me look stupid again, like I once sounded with Makai Lemon. You know that I am a lot harder on my Trojans. I try to stay a little unbiased, but you know there's a lot of things to like about Waymond Jordan. I think there's some other guys I would rather take at this spot.
Yeah, that's fair because this is a pretty deep draft. There's a huge pool here between these two draft classes. So I totally get it, but I understand why he did it, you know. Well,
Me too.
Little statistical upside, shooting for the moon there. Next up, we have another quarterback, Drew Mestemaker, who is transferring along with the entire coaching staff and seemingly the rest of the team from North Texas to Oklahoma State this year. And he's got a chance to put a name for himself even more on the map. He's been flying under the radar. You know, we've talked about him before. You've probably heard his name here and there because he's been leading the entire college football game in a lot of statistics as a passer, but he was playing in North Texas. So the real challenge is ahead with him coming to the Power Four and making that leap against better defenses and seeing if he could do it. The good news is the path there is going to be extremely easy because it's, again, the entire coaching staff basically has followed with him. So he's going to a very similar program as the one he was just at. It's just you're now playing against a bigger and better defensive units, and you're playing under brighter lights. So I think that we've talked about him on our QB tier updates as potentially being a top 12 overall Devy quarterback to own. And I like to stand by that because we've seen some absolutely brilliant throws out of him. But the real question is, how is he going to adapt? You know, it's all obviously quarterback is a very cerebral position to play. So we need to know that Mestemaker is going to be able to step up a little bit in this these brighter lights.
It's going to be a really good litmus test for him. Because that was the one knock that we had, you know, playing at North Texas. He's not really playing against the best competition. And now he gets to go play in the Big 12, which, you know, a little better competition, perhaps not really known for the defensive play in that conference, but it is better competition. He follows Coach Eric Morris, the man who recruited him, right, as a 0-star recruit out of high school. The man did not play a down of varsity football in high school. But just let that sink in. You delve into his story. It's truly incredible how he even got to this point. So again, he's a guy that the odds have been stacked against him, but talent ultimately prevails. And football has a funny way of really showing who's got it, who's got that it factor, and who really wants it. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many stars you have when you recruited. You could go out there and earn it on the football field. And that's exactly what Drew Mestemaker did. So I'm excited to see what he does. We talked about the coaching staff following North Texas there to Oklahoma State. Well, a lot of his weapons did too. We have the talented running back Caleb Hawkins transferred as well to Oklahoma State, and his top wide receiver there, Wyatt Young, did transfer as well. So he's got a lot of familiar faces just in this new place now. So this was my selection when I talked at 308, rather taking some other guys. This is really what I was talking about. I see a guy in the 2027 class that I think is really underrated right now in Devy, just because we haven't seen him. Obviously, if you play C2C leagues, you've known about Drew Mestemaker for a while, and I'm just super, super excited about this guy. He's got a freaking cannon, man. A howitzer out there, man. He could rip that freaking pigskin, man. It's so fun to watch.
We got another quarterback here, a little back-to-backer. We got Brendan Sorsby, whose name has been all over the Twitter streets as everybody was trying to guess where he was going to transfer to. And, of course, he has settled on Texas Tech. So he was fun to watch last year, definitely raw. We've talked about him on an episode or two in the past. He can make some lightning, pinpoint, accurate strikes. He's made some of the most beautiful throws I've seen, some of the best highlight reels in this college football season. And he's also made some of the most boneheaded plays I've seen this college football season. He'll make egregious errors and just completely throw it in the wrong direction. And, there'll be a guy wide open and he's just going to throw it to a defender instead. He just doesn't make the smartest decisions. Texas Tech has obviously seen enough out of him to say, we're going to give him $5 million in NIL money, and we're going to bring him here to try to develop him further and get him a higher elevation in the 2027 draft class. But I think at this point, he's just excited to be, getting paid all that money to play football for one more year for a college football program and potentially still having the draft in his future.
Yeah, it's the current landscape that we're in college football, which, I mean, it has its pros and its cons. A lot of people will tell you it's broken. I don't think they're necessarily wrong, but these are the exciting aspects. You got guys like Brendan Sorsby able to go out there and try to elevate their draft stock in their final season. I think we're seeing it with Josh Hoover too at Indiana, transferring from TCU there to Indiana now. And it just gives them a really good chance to try to elevate that draft stock. Like I said, I like Sorsby. He throws a very beautiful ball, man. He's got a little bit of that gunslinger mentality too, which is hard for me to stay away from. You did mention the turnover worthy plays. He had too many for my liking on this season, but you cannot deny the talent out there. So I like this at 310. This is like the Drew Mestemaker pick. You're banking on that upside, and you're really projecting that he's going to elevate that stock. So 310, man, in a combined mock like this, I have no issue with.
Moving on to Chris Bell. This was my pick. I've been a Bell lever for a little while now, and unfortunately, he got himself hurt. So that's going to put a lot of question marks on his future. But for a while, he was flirting there with potentially 2026 rookie drafts back end of the first round for me, because I think he's just an electric, talented receiver. He gets the Deebo Samuel comp a lot. He's got that big body. He can run the ball. He can play really hard, really physical, but he's sneaky fast as well. So I think he's got a very unique upside, one of those players that you can scheme a little bit around and get him some designed plays that you might not be able to do any other wide receiver for. So he could fit really well as like a 1B in an NFL offense, I think. I don't know if he's like got alpha dog mentality, number one upside, but I think that if he's got a very good player opposite him, that he's going to be able to eat here in the future. The problem is now what's going on with that injury, man. Nobody even knew that he was hurt, and it was just like, oh, by the way, he had surgery.
It was heartbreaking to see, man. You and I were both Bell levers. Just really fun with the ball in his hands. Like, once you get him the ball and he could roll in space, the Deebo comps are worthy, because you really see that type of player. I did start to see him do more work down the field, probably a little more than he was ever given credit for. So I do wish that we could have seen him going on. And man, I mean, is he even going to be able to run at the Combine or the Senior Bowl, any of those things? I haven't really been tracking it. Probably not, with how late he sustained that injury. But I mean, we'll see. He could be a really good value in your 2026 rookie drafts, because I just don't know what type of NFL draft capital he's going to get. But if you believe in the talent, if you trust your training, he might present a pretty good value for you there.
He does attack the ball, and he goes up there and gets it, which I like. We'll see what the future holds for him. And here we have at the 312, Eli Stowers, our first tight end of this round. And he is a very fun player to watch. He obviously won the Mackey this year. And he's somebody who, I've talked a lot of smack before on the tight end position in general, but I do like to take tight ends as you get into the back end of the second round in your rookie drafts, and into the early third round. I think tight end is one of the positions most people are playing tight end premium at this point, and tight ends are very hit or miss, and people want instant results. But a lot of these guys, you draft them with those later picks and you just stash them and you wait and see what happens. And Stowers is one of the few that I feel like has a chance to potentially be an immediate producer at the NFL level, depending on where he lands. Not necessarily as a tight end one in fantasy finish, but getting on the field, kind of like we've seen like a Terrence Ferguson this year, getting on the field, working in a rotation, making a name for yourself, because he is a very complete overall tight end. He can line up in line, he can block, but he's a very athletic guy, and obviously there's a reason why he won the Mackey. So I think that there's not enough buzz around him quite yet at this point, especially considering there's not like a ton of high-end talent at the tight end position in 2026.
Yeah, might be a hot take here, Chris, but he's my tight end one in the class. Has been for a while. I know people really like Kenyon Sadiq because of the athleticism, right? And I've seen that before. Like athleticism matters for the tight end. It absolutely does. I'm not going to discount that. But Eli Stowers does that, and he's more of a complete player to me, and he's still relatively new to the position. That's what I like. I really like, if you know the story, he was recruited to play quarterback for Texas A&M. That obviously wasn't working out. He transferred to New Mexico State, converted to tight end. That's where he met Diego Pavia. Then they both went to Vandy. That's when they both started making that magic happen. And really, I think those two were the provocational force behind that turnaround that you saw at the Vanderbilt program. I've just seen him do it a million times against Texas, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was an absolute beast, a dog all season, all of last season too, as well. He's definitely declaring now. I don't know what type of NFL draft cap we're going to get. And I do want to add the little caveat that my rankings on him might change because I still haven't completely dove into all of the tight ends for that class, but I've maintained him as my tight end one secretly in hushed whispers for a while. I've been struggling. Do I put him, Sadiq, maybe even Trigg there? And I did finally confirm and come out and say, look, Eli Stowers is my number one until proven otherwise, right? He won the Mackey Award for a reason. I just think he's more consistent. I think Sadiq probably has more upside, but I'm going to go with consistency at the tight end position.
I can't knock you there. I love planting your flag, and I totally get it. We are now in the 4th round, and we kick off the 4th round with Mr. Jadarian Price. And I had talked with Emmett Johnson about how there's a lot of differing opinions on who the RB2 of the class is. And I've seen people say it before that he's their RB2 of this class in 2026. And I've seen a lot more of that in the last couple of days on the Twitter streets than I have, in the last month or two. So I think he's really rising now that he's put his name in the draft. I think both you and I would have liked to see another year of him at Notre Dame just to, be the lead dog and prove that he can do it without Jordan Love there or Jeremiah Love there. But he does look good when he has the ball. There's no doubt that he's explosive. He's a very good running back. He could beat you with his speed. He runs hard. Much like with Ryan Williams, my biggest issue with him has been fumbles, right? You don't want to put the ball on the ground. That's going to get you in the doghouse very quickly at the NFL level. We've seen it out of how many running backs over time. You could be the most talented guy in the world, but if you're turning that ball over, you are not going to get the rock, right? So the real thing for us was like, hey, can we maybe see you one more year? Notre Dame, little polish. They obviously have high hopes for the 2026 season, national title, all that fun stuff. Would have been nice to see him go back, but now we have a potential RB2 in the draft class kind of lurking. As I mentioned, he was under some radars. It seems like he's getting some more hype now.
And the hype is warranted. I think that running back 2 is a little high for me, just because I think he's still relatively raw. I think going back to Notre Dame, having that year to be the guy there would have been really good for his overall development. But you cannot knock the traits, and specifically those traits that you talked about. He has legitimate track level speed. He's able to take it to the house at any time, really, and he runs with a lot of physicality. He doesn't really look to make defenders miss a lot. He's gonna hit the hole and go, and then he's gonna lower his shoulder pads and try to initiate the contact. Very, very physical runner for a guy his size, 210 pounds. He's not like some tiny back, but he's also not the biggest guy out there, but he's definitely seeking contact. And that was what I did really enjoy about his all-22 film. So I do like him. He is high for me. He is ranked very highly for me in this class, but not number 2. But I also can't fault anybody who does have him that high, because if you're ranking him as your running back 2, you're doing it on the traits alone, because he actually had a better season last year. And realistically, I mean, he's a guy that we were saying, look, either stay a year and be the guy or transfer after last season and go be a starter. He could have been a starter at any other school in the country, but he decided to turn down all those NIL offers, and he was back there returning kicks for Notre Dame, punt returns too, just doing everything that he could to help the team win. And I think that is going to speak to a lot of scouts. And, we might see him drafted higher than some of those other guys, which at that point, then we're going to have to adjust our rankings a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just the speed is enough to get you intrigued. And I saw somebody call it controlled aggression, the way he runs. And that's a perfect way to put it, because it's not, he runs hard, but it's not a physical, violent type of run. It's I know I'm fast and I'm going to do what I can to get a breakaway if I can. So yeah, definitely a fun one to watch and intriguing depending on the landing spot and draft cap. At 402, we have TJ Moore out of Clemson. I've never really been a giant TJ Moore guy like a lot of other guys were, and I think the entire Clemson season can just kind of be washed away this year, right? It's almost like Clemson didn't even play football this year. So that could be potentially good for TJ Moore because he had some absolute flashes in 2024, looking like a very smooth, polished receiver at a young age. And now he's going to be having a new quarterback coming in to, throw him the rock, and he's got a potential to kind of readjust his own overall value. And I think this might be one of those situations where right now he's being taken because of name value, because his name is TJ Moore, and here he is at 402. I don't know that I would have taken him here, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, going into this season, I was really high on TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, but I had TJ Moore ahead. Really just name value, though, man. You know what? That recruiting service, those 5 stars, it's one hell of a drug. It's kind of like it's equivalent to when you have a rookie pick who was a high-end rookie and he hasn't really been performing, but you're still got that value baked in just because of his draft cap. Very similar here with his 5 stars. I don't know, man. Like, he was still productive, over 800 receiving yards, but there were so many times that he left wanting. Like, I was watching him play and I'm going, man, TJ Moore, like, just give a little bit more effort. It kind of reminded me of DJ Moore, funny enough, of the Chicago Bears, where it's like, he'll just suddenly stop running a route, and then Caleb Williams is throwing an interception, and then the play before that he's making an incredible play. And it's just the inconsistency that you see with him, which is really my biggest issue. And you saw Bryant Wesco, his counterpart there at Clemson, really start to take over. Bryant Wesco's a dog out there and was just, before the injury, was looking unstoppable, and TJ Moore had the chance to be the guy, and we just didn't see it. Now, of course, there's still a lot of context behind that. The injuries, of the rapid and sudden decline of Cade Klubnik definitely played a factor into it as well. But there was times where TJ Moore just wasn't given his best effort. And it was like, do you even really want to be out there? Or are you just content to take your NIL money, make millions of dollars and then just move on with your life? I'm not convinced that he loves football. And that concerns me as somebody who has a few shares of TJ Moore in Devy.
That's always concerning. And if you're around in the summer, I like to watch interviews with these players. And I love when a guy really just loves being out there. That's why I like Mendoza so much, man. I don't think he's a great dynasty asset necessarily, but he's so much fun to watch because this guy just loves playing football. And I hate when guys seem mentally checked out, So not my favorite pick, but if you're going to take him here in the 4th round, why not? This was my pick, and after you took Eli Stowers, I had to take Michael Trigg because I love Michael Trigg. The more I watch Michael Trigg, the more I love Michael Trigg. He's just
so much fun.
A fun player to watch, man. He's just a big-bodied, athletic, receiving tight end who I think is going to be a mismatch. He's already a mismatch in Baylor. He's going to be a mismatch at the NFL level. He's so much fun to watch. He has a wide receiver-like route tendencies. They split him out wide. They split him there in the slot. He can break a lot of those early adjustments at the line from the defenders, get open there in the middle of the field, on the outside of the field, make some absolute highlight reel catches with one hand, with 2 hands, with his feet, with whatever he wants. He just looks fantastic out there. His yards per route run this year was 2.18, which is very good. It's better than Kenyon Sadiq. Not quite as good as Stowers, but very, very good. Top 8 in college football. His average depth of target is over 11. So like I said, he's making those wide receiver like moves to get the ball. It's not like he's just getting these curl routes and hitch routes and drags across the field like some of these tight ends are doing just to get him an easy target and let his big body plow over some defenders. He's out there running like a wide receiver. So I love the overall. You just watch any tape on him and you're just like, oh man, I have to salivate because there's some insane potential. And when we're talking about tight end, you want a guy who has that massive monster weekly upside because you're going to plug him in. You're only going to have a handful on your dynasty lineup that you feel solid about every week, right? And you don't want it to be like Dalton Schultz, right? You want it to be a guy like Kyle Pitts or somebody who has that massive upside ability, and that's what I think Michael Trigg brings to his game.
Yeah. I love Michael Trigg, man. He's so much fun. 16 targets week 1 versus Auburn. I believe it was a 26% target share just that week alone. He didn't quite have that many targets the rest of the season, but you consistently saw him get 10, 11 targets on the season for a total of 85 targets, 69% alignment in the slot. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. That's fantasy goldmine for tight ends. You want those guys that are lining up in the slot, that can line up out wide, that can be used in motion. Michael Trigg is that guy. Look, Michael Trigg has always been that guy. Going back to his time when he was first recruited to USC, he was just a little bit of a knucklehead out there and kept getting suspended and injured. And I think he's finally put it all together and had the best season now going into the draft. Very fun and tantalizing option there at 403. And for a guy that's probably going to be taken in the second round of 2026 Dynasty rookie drafts, man, I love it here. I love the value right there. But let's move on to 404. We're running out of time here.
John Mateer was up next, and he is not going anywhere. He's announced that he's staying at Oklahoma, and we were obviously very high on him, especially you early in the offseason, and he started so hot. He was the leading Heisman contender after the first couple of weeks in the NFL or in the college football season, and then he got hurt. And unfortunately, the hype just kind of died there, and, the rest is history. But the big thing that we like out of him is that Konami code rushing upside, which we always talk about because it makes so easy to just put these guys who might not even be the greatest passers. I'm not saying he's not a good passer, but when you got dynasty quarterbacks that are just getting, 10 points a week on their feet, that's easy, man. You want that as long as you can take it. That's why Justin Fields was going for so much, even at the beginning of this year. You want these rushing guys, and he is a missed tackles force machine when he gets moving on his feet. And he does have some beautiful, beautiful throwing ability whenever he gets a chance. Sometimes erratic. I think erratic's a great word for it. But if he puts it all together next year, man, oh boy.
Going back to school is the right choice. I was looking like a genius there for the first couple of weeks of the season because I mean nobody was really talking about John Mateer, and I just loved his tape at Washington State, man, coming after Cam Ward. I was all in. I'm still all in. You saw what happened, man. It was the injury. He broke his freaking hand. Like, what are you supposed to do as a quarterback? But he's such a warrior, man. Came back, definitely came back way too early and was out there playing. And you saw the impact that it had on his throwing motion, on the accuracy, everything. And he was still out there running like quarterback draws and designed runs out there, man. He's a beast. He's got a lot of Baker Mayfield to his game. That's a pretty common comp. And I mean, you see it just, maybe it's the uniform, but I think you see it a little bit of that running style, kind of like a little bit of swagger that he's got out there. Hell, even his throwing motion, to be honest, it's very reminiscent of Baker Mayfield. And I think staying a year, getting fully healthy, another year in that offense, I think it's going to pay dividends. So I'd love the pick there at 404.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a great shot to take on him. Next up was your pick. You had Ryan Wingo, who's a guy who obviously came into the season with much hype. And fun fact about Ryan Wingo, he was the 5th fastest player in college football this year, clocking in at 22 miles per hour. However, he didn't really do what we thought he was going to do this year. He only had 100-yard receiving game. Obviously we talked about the rise and fall and re-rise of Arch Manning and kind of how Texas's season went. So not what we wanted to see out of him, but I kind of like this more than, taking a shot on TJ Moore here. In the mid of the 4th round, Ryan Wingo's got that speed and that overall upside that is tantalizing with these picks.
Yeah, he's another 2027 pick here that a lot of people were very upset that we didn't have in the 1st and 2nd round. And again, it's like, that's name value, guys. You got to watch it. And he did struggle a lot at times this season. Now, Arch Manning did not do this man or any of his receivers any favors early on in the season, but he still had 7 drops. And a lot of it was concentration stuff, dropping the ball and explicit, like looking to get the yardage after the catch, not fully bringing it in. But I think with the addition of Cam Coleman, that's going to solidify their outside boundary wide receiver, whether it be the X or wherever they want to line him up. And it's really going to free Ryan Wingo to be utilized more as a chess piece there. Was he going to be laying the slot? He's probably going to be the motion guy. So I'm really excited because I think he's going to be a better fit now that we have that dominant alpha. I can't say that they truly had that in their offense last season. Parker Livingstone and some other guys stepped up and made some plays, but you didn't have anybody with the talent of a Cam Coleman out there. And I think that's going to unlock everything about Brian Wingo that makes him special. He could be a deep threat, just get him the ball in space and just let him use that natural God-given speed out there. You talked about him being the fifth fastest recorded in terms of miles per hour this season. You don't even need the miles per hour tracker on this dude, man. You could just see it. Boy's fast out there. So I am excited about him. He's got a lot to clean up. He has to run a full route tree. He has a lot to clean up in his game, but the talent is evident. The name value is still there. So at 405, I think that's a tremendous pick there. Of course, I do. I made the pick.
Of course you do. And notably, he was one of the biggest recruiters of Cam Coleman, trying to get him to come to Texas. So you love to see it. He's got that, that burnt orange passion, and he's ready to go down there, and he wants a big time dog opposite him. So that's fun. Antonio Williams is clocking in at 406, another Clemson wide receiver, which means, much like we just talked about with DJ Moore, just an underwhelming season overall, despite the name value. However, there's a lot to like here. I think that he's still, because of that name value, floating around in a lot of these mocks. We recently did a mock for just 2026 players with some of our Discord mates in the Devy Dojo Discord, which you can join with the link in the comments. But if you want to come join some mocks and stuff, that's when you'll see guys like Antonio Williams going in the second round of 2026 rookie drafts, which I think tells you a lot about the overall state of the 2026 class.
Look, Antonio Williams might not be a dog out there, but he was a really good slot player. He was a guy that was projected to be a first-round player before the injury. He had an injury, he had to sit out most of the season, came back, and Klubnik was just sucking it up out there at times then. But he did have a couple big games against Duke. He had 149 yards and a touchdown. And I remember watching that game and I'm going, okay, maybe he's back. And he just never really returned to form. Again, a lot of context with the Clemson team this season. So I actually don't mind it, because I think that the talent is still there. He's still a really good route runner. Anytime you can win based off your route running, you're going to always have a chance in the NFL. Do I think he's going to be a wide receiver one for fantasy or even on his team? No, I don't. He's going to be a back end late second, early third in your 2026 rookie drafts, and he's going to be a depth piece. But those matter. I know there's a lot of people that will tell you, in start 9 formats, it's only about studs. Look, I've never won a championship without having good depth. I don't care what people tell you, because you can have the best top 9 and then you get injuries and then you have nothing but duds at the end and you're not winning. So if you want to win championships, depth absolutely matters. And I think he's going to be one of those pieces. I don't think he's a game breaker. I don't think he's an elite player, but he's a decent player that's going to have some value for him.
Ty Simpson, I think this is a great pick here, if only because we know this guy's going to be probably a first round pick, if not a locked in day 2 pick. There's a really good shot somebody's going to, everybody wants to mock him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe, I don't know if that'll happen or not.
He
does feel like a Steeler, and I don't hate the guy. I think he's fun to watch. The biggest overall knock on him is he's kind of fallen off. When we were doing our quarterback tier updates, it wasn't quite the end of the season yet, and even in the games after we released that episode, he seemed to have struggled a little bit more. Overall, the thing that you would like to see is more starts. So it would have been better for him, I think, to go back to school. I totally get it, though. This is a great opportunity for him to go to the NFL. I've talked before about how I would love to see some of these guys go to a place with an established quarterback. That's what I would like out of him. Maybe the Rams, if he sneaks into the end of the first round, who knows where the Rams end up. They're probably one of the favorites for Super Bowl title now. But if he's still there at 32, they might want to take him, let him sit a year behind Stafford and figure it out. I think that would behoove him, would be to have a year where he gets to learn a little bit more, especially as you're making that leap, because he's only had one real year of starting games at the college level, and now he's jumping into the NFL draft and projected as a high pick. He's made some great throws. I think he's got a more athletic arm talent than Fernando Mendoza, but I don't know that he's got the same decision-making processing as Fernando Mendoza at this point in time. So that's what I mean. It's, for me, he's more of a project than a plug-and-play starter. But these guys have value at Superflex. If they're going to eventually be starters in the NFL, you need them on your team, and this is a great spot to grab him here.
Yeah, we know, there's the supply of cornerbacks coming into this draft is very limited, yet the demand is still really high. So Ty Simpson, even with 15 starts, is likely to be a first round NFL draft pick. So that right there gives him a value boost. Am I going to be drafting him in the first round of my rookie drafts? Hell no. And I'm a Ty Simpson believer. My wife is a Bama fan, and I've talked to her like, hey, I like this Ty Simpson kid. I wish he would have stayed at Bama. It kind of feels like he got pushed out a little bit, and he just, he bled crimson. Yeah, I think he just moved out, man. I think he would have rather declared for the draft than move on and play for another team. I mean, it was evident he never transferred, right? He sat behind Jalen Milroe, behind Bryce Young, all those guys, and waiting his turn, and he finally got it. And let's not forget, Chris, because narratives are formed based on the last thing that we saw. But let's not forget the beginning of the season, outside of the Florida State game, his very first start. He looked pretty good. He looked like the processing ability was there, and then like the offensive line at times wasn't always giving him the best protection. I will say at times it was his fault holding onto the ball too long, but he got banged up, man. Indiana, he had a bruised rib. He had some back issues going into those games. He was beaten and battered and limping into the playoffs, and he was still putting it all on the line out there. I think he's a very tough individual as well. I just wish that he could have stayed at school because 15 starts is a very, very big red flag on your profile. I mean, you look at quarterbacks like Mark Sanchez, Anthony Richardson. Those are the type of quarterbacks that had that same amount of starts or less. And just historically, it does not look good. So I do have the concerns on this kid are very, very real. But I do just want to paint some of the context that happened because early on he was looking like he belonged. A lot of us were saying, man, he might be quarterback one in this class. Like, remember, that was just a couple months ago.
Yeah, deservedly so. And obviously things change quick in the college football season, but I'm happy for him, man. There's a good shot that he's going to have a real chance to be a starter into his rookie year. So we'll see how it goes for him. And obviously I took this pick, so I like the pick. Nate Frazier is up next. And Nate Frazier feels like one of those guys who's just like, he's just there. He's like right there, right? He's almost going to break out. He's not quite there yet. And like he had a decent season, very, very well rated by PFF on his rushing grade, decent amount of yards, decent yards per carry, not a ton of touchdowns. It just feels like we're waiting for a breakout that may or may not come at this point.
Pretty disappointing as a guy who was very high in Nate Frazier going into the season. He has his counterpart there, Chauncey Bowens, who looks just as good as him. Like they're a pretty good tandem, and it's Georgia. They're going to rotate those backs in and out. He still almost had 1,000 yards rushing, right? So it's there. He has a lot of traits that I really like. I like his ability to hit top speed very quickly, and his ability to maintain that top speed when he makes a cut, when he makes those breaks. So I mean, he has that spike week potential. We just got to see more consistency with him. He's another guy. Again, it's kind of a theme in these rounds. A lot of name value, but their stock you've started to see drop because of their play. And we have a lot of questions going into this season. Like, he could be one of those top end backs in 2027, but it's a pretty talented running back class in 2027. And he's got a lot of work to do to pass some of those names. But I love the pick here at 408. Right. It's shooting for upside at this point.
Very much like Ryan Wingo, just as a running back, as far as not quite had that breakout that we anticipated, but also extremely fast. So there's a good shot for him to chase some upside there next year. Next up, this was your pick. We have Mr. Sam Leavitt, who is now Lane Kiffin's new quarterback at LSU. Tell me why you like him.
I like him because he's going to Lane Kiffin. I mean, we saw what he was able to do. Yeah, I mean, Sam Leavitt, look, he put some good stuff on tape 2024 at Arizona State, throwing the ball to Jordan Tyson. This season, again, he got injured. It wasn't the best at times. Kind of played a little more reckless this season, so he's got a lot to clean up. But if there's one thing that Lane Kiffin can do, it's designing an offense around his playmakers, and specifically with his quarterbacks, giving him more of a pre-designed read it's a lot of RPO action. But over the years, you've started to see Lane Kiffin kind of open it up. It's a big reason why I was initially a little low on Jackson Dart coming out of college, because I said, look, this offense just makes it really easy for the quarterback. And so if playing C2C and CFF, I love this move for Sam Leavitt, and I think that he still has traits that are going to be able to translate to the NFL. The dude is a gamer out there. Like, he will make some magic happen when it's time to. You've seen him roll out of the pocket, make defenders miss, and just throw up a prayer. And you're like, what are you doing? Oh my God, yes, that's the greatest throw I've ever seen. And I think going to LSU, better recruits that they're going to be able to get there. I do like the addition that they've made. Little sneak preview here. And Jayce Brown coming from Kansas State. I really like that move for him. And I've seen him target his primary wide receivers before. And I think that that's going to happen again here at LSU with Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, absolutely. And you alluded to it. Next up, we have Jayce Brown, who is now paired with Sam Leavitt at LSU. And he's definitely a fun receiver, but for me, he's more a guy that I like in C2C formats and CFF formats than I think as a Devy asset. We'll see if, because this is a great opportunity for him to go down there. They produce so many good wide receivers, obviously, with a different coaching staff in recent years, but he's got a chance to develop his game a little bit more. But he seems to me like a bit of a one-trick pony, as more of a deep threat than anything else that I'm not sure will translate necessarily to the NFL level. But it'll be fun, man. We've seen Sam Leavitt turn Jordan Tyson into an absolute monster. So if they can reclaim some of that same chemistry, these two could be wheels up for Jayce Brown in 2026.
Yep. I'm right there with you, man.
Perfect. Next up, we have Mr. Mark Fletcher, who was just playing in a national title game, and he is a very fun running back to watch.
I mean, we saw him at the end of the season, man, really amp it up. This playoff run that Miami went on, it was literally put on the entire shoulders of Mark Fletcher. It was, we're going to run the ball. We're going to give you 25, 27 carries a game and just go out there and dominate. Just go out there and win us the game. Carson Beck will make some throws when he has to. We'll get the ball to Malachi Toney, but it was all put on Mark Fletcher. And even against last night's national championship, he had 112 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Indiana, including a big breakaway run, 57-yard touchdown run against one of the best defenses yesterday. And look, Miami came pretty close to winning, and it was in large part due to Mark Fletcher. Now, he has already said that he's going back to school, but I have been wondering, Chris, with the running back class being quote unquote weaker this season, could Mark Fletcher actually declare for the draft now? I mean, he still has some time, I believe, to declare for this draft. And I wouldn't be surprised personally to see him declare for that draft based on the run that he just had. I mean, you've really seen his stock elevate now.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost immediately going to be in the contestant for RB2 in this class, because he's looked really, really good this year. We know we love missed tackles forced. He's top 7. He's tied with Katron Allen with 57 this year. He was top 3 in the Power 4 with PFF overall running grade. Just absolutely a force out there. The stats and the analytics all back it up, but you can just watch the guy and you know that he's got extremely high ceiling. If he breaks it loose, he's got a chance to take it to the house, which is beautiful. I don't know that he's got a great receiving upside, and in this case, they haven't used him a ton out of the backfield. I know he's dropped a few balls this year, and so he's more of a pure runner than anything else, but he's a fun one to take here at the end of the 4th round. Yes, and rounding it up, our Shinobi Josh took DJ Lagway, and I believe this was just a pure upside play. And how the mighty have fallen. It has been rough ever since that 5 interception game, dude. It's just been like people don't even care that DJ Lagway exists.
Yeah, that was against LSU too. I mean, pretty rough against SEC play. I don't know that Lagway can process the field at this level. He's really struggled. I've been a big proponent of him. I did look, I'll admit it. I really liked DJ Lagway coming out of high school. And I was once saying, look, you gotta practice patience with these guys. And, he did get his opportunity. You can make all the excuses in the world. He was injured at the start of spring practice. He didn't get his first reps until close to week 1. He didn't get to develop chemistry with this. You could say all that, but his play on the field did not warrant that of a top end 5-star recruit. And now we've seen, I think it's official that he's at Baylor. I know
it is official. Yeah.
Kind of verbally, it is official Baylor. Okay. He was kind of courting some other teams. I really think he was just holding out to see who would throw him the most money. Look, that's the playing college football these days. That's what they got to do, man. Man, it's about his business. I can't knock it too much. So we'll see. His dad did play at Baylor. I think that played a role in him selecting Baylor. But I mean, man, going from SEC level competition to now Big 12, to me, when you transfer down like that as a quarterback, it's a red flag right there, man. And it kind of seems like step one on the path to just falling down and fading slowly into irrelevancy. So I'm rooting
Right.
hard for the kid. I got a lot of shares of him. Made some trades for him when his stock was dwindling. You know,
This is a good
that's the
chance to
key point.
reclaim value, though, because,
Yeah.
I think we are kind of in lockstep on that as far as him not necessarily being a true NFL, Devy asset, but you could potentially make great use of this. People are going to make the RG3 comparison now that he's at Baylor. He's going to have some easy games earlier on in the season. He's going to put up some numbers, hopefully, and give you an opportunity to sell him. So at this point, it's a firm hold on DJ Lagway. I wouldn't be running out there to flip him in the middle of the offseason. Wait till he gets a couple games under his belt, then ship him off.
Yeah, exactly. Now is not the right time. You have to know the time of the season, and you have to know when to strike. Something we've talked about on a past trade show here. But Chris, we've talked long enough. This was fun. We y'all gave you 4 rounds of a combined 2026 and 2027 rookie mock draft. As it stands right now, we know things are bound to change, but this gives you kind of a good outlook if you are comparing against the two classes. So this is football we're talking about in Devy and Dynasty. A lot can change very quickly. This time last season, we were saying 2026 was going to be very quarterback heavy, and that it was going to be a great quarterback class, and we've seen how quickly that changed. So do keep in mind that things change very quickly.
A lot of these players that are in the late second round of 2026 mocks haven't been selected here. So I think that shows you that there's a little bit more of a sway towards the 2027 class here overall. But there's always something to be said about proximity to the NFL. So definitely an interesting experiment. I'm glad we ran it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody's got to say in the comments.
For sure. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. It helps us more than you probably realize. And look, if you want to keep the conversation going, make sure to join the Devy Dojo Discord. That's where we're talking through these boards, trade ideas, mock drafts, and class values all week. And if you're looking for written versions and deeper dives, make sure to check out the Devy Dojo Substack. All those links are going to be in the description, so make sure to check that out. And once again, appreciate all of you guys for watching. We'll be back in the next episode with some heat. Me and Chris are going to be looking at some all 2020 for some of these guys. We're going to be looking at the same prospects, and then we're going to not talk about it all week, and then we're going to get on the show and we're going to talk about what we saw on film, and we're going to give a little bit of a scouting report for you. So until then, we will see you at the dojo.